Captain Riley stepped off her cargo ship and into the busy corridors of Nexus Station. The massive space station buzzed with activity as thousands of different alien species moved about their business. Traders shouted prices in dozens of languages. Cargo loaders hummed past with their heavy loads, and the air filled with the mixed scents of 100 different worlds. Riley had been running cargo between human colonies and alien trading posts for 8 years now. She knew every shortcut through the station's maze-like corridors and could spot a good deal from 3 sectors away. Today, she needed something special. Her next job was mining rare crystals on a planet called Kepler 422b, and it was going to be dangerous work. The planet had crushing gravity, poisonous air, and ground that shook without warning. 3 other mining teams had already tried and failed. The pay was huge, but only if someone could actually get the job done. Riley needed workers who could handle the impossible. She made her way to the labor exchange, a large hall where beings from across the galaxy came to find work. The place was packed. Near the entrance, a group of sleek blue aliens called Veltari were already being hired. They were small, ate very little, and could work in tight spaces. Perfect for most jobs, and cheap to keep around. Further in, some Zephyrians were showing off their speed to potential bosses. These bird-like creatures could fly and move faster than almost anyone else. They were getting snapped up quickly, too. Riley walked deeper into the hall, looking for someone different. She needed workers who could handle heavy lifting in dangerous conditions. Most species here were built for efficiency, not raw power. Then she saw her. In the far corner of the hall, sitting alone on a bench made for much smaller beings, was the biggest alien Riley had ever seen. She had to be 12 feet tall, even sitting down. Her skin looked like gray stone and muscles showed, clearly under her simple work clothes. 2 small horns curved from her forehead, and her eyes held a tired sadness. Around the giant alien, the space stayed empty. Other job seekers gave her a wide circle, as if she might be dangerous. But Riley could see the truth. The alien wasn't scary. She was just alone. Riley watched as a Zephyrian trader approached the giant alien, looked her up and down, then quickly walked away, shaking his head. A few minutes later, a group of Veltari did the same thing. They whispered to each other as they left, words like too big and too expensive floating back. The giant alien's shoulders drooped a little more with each rejection. Riley had seen enough. She walked over and sat down on the bench beside the alien. Up close, she could see the careful way the giant held herself, trying to take up as little space as possible. "Hi there," Riley said in Galactic Basic, the common language most species used for trade. "I'm Captain Riley. What's your name?" The giant alien looked surprised that someone was actually talking to her. "I am Cathara of the Titanhigh," she said in a deep, gentle voice. "Though I do not think you are here to hire me, Captain. No one ever is." "Why do you say that?" Riley asked, though she could already guess the answer. Cathara gestured to her massive frame. "Look at me. I am too big for most ships. I eat more in one day than a Veltari eats in a week. I need special sleeping quarters, reinforced chairs, and doorways made wider just so I can fit through them. Who would want to pay for all that trouble?" Riley studied Cathara's face. Despite her size, there was something gentle about her. And smart, too. The way she spoke showed real education and thought. "What kind of work did you do before coming here?" Riley asked. Cathara's eyes lit up slightly. "I was a structural engineer on my homeworld. My people, the Titanhigh, we built the great cities that touch the clouds. We designed bridges that could span entire valleys and buildings that could withstand the worst storms, but that was before—" Her voice trailed off, and the light in her eyes dimmed. "Before what?" Riley prompted gently. "Before the mining corporations came. They said our world had valuable minerals deep underground. They offered to pay our government huge amounts of money to dig them up. We thought it would make everyone rich. Cathara's big hands clenched into fists. Instead, they stripped our planet bare. The beautiful cities fell into the empty holes they left behind. Most of my people died. The few of us who survived scattered across the galaxy, looking for work wherever we could find it. Riley felt a familiar anger rising in her chest. She had heard stories like this before. Big corporations destroying worlds for profit, leaving the people to suffer. It was one of the reasons she preferred working alone, taking jobs the big companies wouldn't touch. "How long have you been here?" Riley asked. 3 weeks, Cathara said quietly. "Every day, potential employers come and look at me. They ask about my strength. Yes, I am strong. They ask about my skills. Yes, I know engineering and heavy machinery. But then they ask about costs. How much food do I need? How much space? How much air? Always the answer is the same. Too much. Too expensive. Not worth it." As if to prove her point, another trader approached. This one was a Veltari, small and efficient-looking. He carried a data pad and had the quick, calculating look of someone who measured everything in profits. "You there, big one?" he said to Cathara. "Can you lift 2 tons?" "Easily," Cathara replied, sitting up straighter. "Can you work in low oxygen environments?" "My people evolved on a world with thin air." "Yes." The Veltari made notes on his pad, nodding. Then he asked the question Riley knew was coming. "Daily food requirements? I need about 12 standard meal units per day to maintain my strength," Cathara answered honestly. The Veltari's expression changed immediately. 12? A Veltari worker needs only 2. For the cost of feeding you, I could hire 6 of my own people. He turned to walk away, then paused. "Also, I would need to modify my ship just to fit you aboard. Not economical." And just like that, he was gone. Cathara's shoulders slumped again. "You see, this happens every time." Riley watched the Veltari trader move on to examine a group of his own species. She could see his logic. From his perspective, hiring Cathara made no sense. Why take 1 expensive worker when you could have 6 cheap ones? But Riley was human, and humans thought differently. "Tell me about your engineering background," she said. For the next hour, Cathara talked about her education and experience. She had studied structural engineering for 15 years, specializing in construction in dangerous environments. She understood physics, geology, and materials science. She had personally designed and built structures that withstood earthquakes, floods, and extreme weather. More importantly, she talked about her people's approach to work. The Titan High didn't just complete jobs, they took pride in building things that would last. They saw their work as a reflection of their honor, and they never ever left a task unfinished. Riley found herself getting excited. This wasn't just a strong back for hire, this was exactly the kind of person she needed for Kepler 442b. "Cathara," she said finally, "what would you say if I told you I had a job that needed someone exactly like you?" The giant alien looked at her with disbelief. "I would say you are being kind, but I would not believe you." "What job could possibly need someone my size?" Riley grinned. "How do you feel about mining rare crystals on a planet where the gravity is 3 times Earth normal, the air is poisonous, and the ground shakes every few hours?" Cathara's eyes widened. "That sounds extremely dangerous." "It is. 3 other teams have already failed. But the pay is enormous. Enough to set you up for life if we succeed." Riley leaned forward. "Here's the thing, Cathara. Everyone else looks at you and sees problems. They see extra costs and complications. But I look at you and see solutions." "What do you mean?" "I mean that crushing gravity that would flatten a Veltari. You can handle it. Those unstable rock formations that need someone strong enough to move heavy equipment. That's you. The dangerous conditions that require someone tough enough to work when everything goes wrong. You're built for it." Riley stood up and extended her hand. I'm not offering you temporary work, Kithara. I'm offering you a permanent position on my crew, full pay, full benefits, and a ship that I'll modify to fit you properly. What do you say?" Kithara stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Around them, the labor exchange continued its busy noise, but between the human and the Titan High, everything was quiet. Finally, Kithara reached out and took Riley's hand in her much larger one. Her grip was careful, gentle despite her obvious strength. "I say yes, Captain Riley, and I promise you this, I will not let you down." Riley smiled. "I never thought you would." As they walked toward the exit together, Riley noticed other traders staring. Some looked confused. Others looked like they thought she was making a terrible mistake. A Zephyrian merchant she knew called out, "Riley, that's going to cost you a fortune to maintain." Riley just waved back. Let them think what they wanted. She had learned long ago that humans saw things differently than other species. Where others saw costs, humans often saw opportunities. Where others saw problems, humans found potential. And sometimes, just sometimes, that made all the difference. As they boarded Riley's ship, the Determination, Kithara paused at the airlock. "Captain, may I ask why you chose me?" "Really?" Riley looked up at her new crew member and smiled. "Because everyone else was looking at you like you were an expense. I looked at you." The first 3 days aboard the Determination were harder than Riley expected. Not because of Kithara, but because of everything else. The ship's doorways were too narrow. Kithara had to turn sideways and duck just to move between rooms. The sleeping quarters Riley had given her were meant for humans, so Kithara couldn't even lie down properly. She had to sleep sitting up, her back against the wall. The dining area was even worse. The chairs couldn't support her weight, and the table came up to her knees. Kithara tried to eat her meals sitting on the floor, but she looked so uncomfortable that Riley felt terrible about it. "This isn't working," Riley said on the third morning, watching Kithara try to squeeze into the pilot's cabin for their daily planning meeting. "We need to make some changes. Please, Captain, do not worry about me," Kithara said quickly. "I can manage. I do not want to be trouble." "You're not trouble," Riley replied firmly. "You're crew, and crew deserves to be comfortable." That afternoon, Riley docked at a small repair station. She spent nearly all her emergency funds hiring a construction team to modify the ship. They widened doorways, reinforced floors, and built custom furniture that could handle Kithara's size and weight. The station manager, a grumpy Zephyrian named Vex, watched the work with disapproval. "You are spending a fortune on modifications. For one worker," he told Riley. "This makes no business sense. You could have hired 20 Veltari for what you are spending here." Riley was helping install a larger bed in Kithara's quarters. "Maybe," she said, not looking up from her work, "but 20 Veltari can't do what Kithara can do." "And what exactly can she do that is worth this expense?" Vex asked. Riley paused in her work. She realized she was about to explain something that most aliens simply couldn't understand. "She can solve problems that haven't been solved yet." Vex's feathers ruffled with confusion. "What does that mean?" "It means humans think differently about value," Riley said. "You look at Kithara and calculate immediate costs, food, space, modifications. But we look at potential. We see what she might accomplish, not just what she costs today." While the modifications continued, Riley and Kithara spent time talking about the job ahead. The more they talked, the more excited Riley became. Kithara knew things that other species had never bothered to learn. She understood how different types of rock behaved under pressure. She could look at a mining site and predict where cave-ins might happen. She knew which tools worked best in high gravity environments and which ones would break under stress. "The previous mining teams," Kithara said, studying the geological reports, "they used standard equipment designed for normal gravity. But on Kepler 442b, everything weighs 3 times as much. Their machines probably broke down within days. Riley nodded. That's exactly what happened to the first 2 teams. The third team never even made it to the surface. Their landing gear couldn't handle the weight. Cathara's eyes lit up with understanding. But my people, we grew up in heavy gravity. Our homeworld was similar to Kepler 442b. I know how to work in those conditions. I know what equipment will survive and what will fail. See? Riley said, grinning. That's what I mean about potential. Any other species would need months of training and special equipment to work on that planet. You already know how to do it. Over the next few days, as they traveled toward Kepler 442b, Riley watched Cathara work on their equipment. The giant alien's hands, which looked so clumsy and oversized, moved with incredible precision. She reinforced their mining tools, modified their gravity suits, and redesigned their extraction equipment. Everything she touched became stronger, more reliable, better designed for the harsh conditions they would face. How did you learn to do this? Riley asked, watching Cathara rebuild their primary drill. Necessity, Cathara replied sadly. When the mining corporations destroyed our world, those of us who survived had to learn to fix anything and everything. We had no choice but to become experts at making broken things work again. Riley felt that familiar anger again. Anger at the corporations who had destroyed so much. But she also felt something else. Pride. Pride in her decision to hire Cathara, and pride in what they might accomplish together. On the 5th day of their journey, they received a transmission from Nexus Station. It was from Vex, the Zephyrian station manager. Captain Riley, his voice crackled through the communications system. I have been thinking about our conversation. I have decided that if your mining operation succeeds, I would be interested in hiring a Titanhigh worker for my own projects. Riley and Cathara exchanged glances. Why the change of heart, Vex? Riley asked. I spoke with other traders after you left. They said you are known for taking impossible jobs and somehow making them work. If you think this giant alien is worth the investment, perhaps I should reconsider my calculations. After the transmission ended, Cathara was quiet for a long time. Captain, she finally said, is it true that humans often take jobs others consider impossible? Riley thought about it. I guess we do. We have a saying, nothing is impossible, just difficult. I think most humans believe that if you want something badly enough and you're willing to work hard enough, you can usually find a way to make it happen. But why? Cathara asked. Why not just take the easy jobs that guarantee profit? Riley smiled. Because easy jobs don't change anything. Easy jobs don't make the galaxy a better place, and they certainly don't help people who need help. She looked at Cathara, who was listening intently. Your people were engineers and builders, right? You created beautiful cities and amazing structures. That wasn't easy work. Why did you do it? Cathara's expression softened. Because we wanted to build something that would last. Something that would make our children proud. Something that mattered. Exactly, Riley said. Humans are the same way. We don't just want to make money, we want to make a difference. As they approached Kepler 442b, Riley realized something important was happening. The modifications to her ship weren't just accommodating Cathara, they were improving everything. The reinforced floors meant the ship could carry heavier cargo. The wider doorways made it easier to move large equipment. The stronger furniture and fixtures meant everything was more durable. What had seemed like expensive changes were actually valuable upgrades. More importantly, Cathara was changing too. The sad, rejected alien Riley had found at the labor exchange was becoming confident and excited about the work ahead. She walked taller, spoke more freely, and smiled more often. Captain, Cathara said as they entered orbit around Kepler 442b, I want you to know something. In 3 weeks working for you, I have felt more valued than I did in months searching for employment. Other species see my size as a problem to be solved. You see it as a tool to be used. Riley looked out at the dangerous planet below them. 3 other teams had failed here. The conditions were harsh beyond imagination. Any reasonable person would probably turn around and leave. But Riley wasn't just reasonable. She was human. And humans had a particular talent for seeing opportunity where others saw only obstacles. "Cathara," she said, "I have a feeling we're about to show this galaxy what happens when someone finally gives you a chance to prove what you can do." The giant alien smiled, and for the first time since Riley had met her, it was a smile full of confidence and excitement. "Yes, Captain," Cathara said. "I believe we are." As their ship descended toward the planet's surface, Riley felt certain they were about to change everything, not just for themselves, but for every Titan high in the galaxy who had been told they were too big, too expensive, too much trouble. Sometimes, all it took was one person willing to see potential instead of problems. And humans, Riley thought with satisfaction, were very good at that. The moment Riley stepped off the ship onto Kepler 442b, she understood why 3 other teams had failed. The gravity hit her like a wall. Every step felt like she was carrying 2 extra people on her back. Her breathing became labored almost. Immediately, and she had to grab onto the ship's landing ramp for support. Cathara stepped down beside her and looked around calmly, as if the crushing gravity was nothing more than a light breeze. "The gravity feels familiar," she said, breathing normally while Riley struggled. "My homeworld was very similar. Perhaps slightly heavier, actually." Riley managed a weak smile. "Show off," she wheezed. The landscape around them was like nothing Riley had ever seen. Jagged mountains rose into a greenish sky, and the air shimmered with toxic gases that their suits filtered out. In the distance, she could see the abandoned equipment from the previous mining attempts. Twisted metal and broken machinery scattered across the rocky ground like the bones of some ancient beast. "Look at that," Riley said, pointing to a massive drill that had been snapped in half. "That's a Corvin heavy-duty mining drill. Those things are supposed to be unbreakable." Cathara walked over to examine the wreckage. Even in the heavy gravity, she moved with surprising grace. She knelt down and ran her hands over the broken metal. "The drill itself is fine," she said after a moment, "but they mounted it wrong. See these stress fractures? They used standard mounting brackets designed for normal gravity. Under 3 times the weight, the brackets failed, and the drill twisted apart." She stood up and looked around at the other scattered equipment. The same mistake over and over. They brought equipment designed for easy conditions and tried to use it in harsh ones. Riley watched as Cathara moved from machine to machine, examining each piece of broken equipment. The giant alien's engineering knowledge was obvious in every observation she made. What looked like random destruction to Riley was actually a clear pattern of predictable failures to Cathara. "So what do we do differently?" Riley asked. Cathara smiled, and Riley realized it was the first time she had seen her look truly confident. "We do what my people always did. We build things that are stronger than they need to be." Over the next several hours, Riley watched, in amazement as Cathara transformed their mining operation. She reinforced every piece of equipment with extra supports. She redesigned their drilling setup to distribute weight more evenly. She even rebuilt their extraction system to handle the heavier ore they would be pulling from the ground. The work that would have taken a team of smaller aliens days to complete, Cathara finished in hours. Her size, which everyone else saw as a disadvantage, allowed her to handle massive pieces of equipment that other species would need machines to move. "How did you learn to do all this?" Riley asked, watching Cathara single-handedly position a drill that weighed several tons. "When you grow up in heavy gravity, you learn that everything must be built stronger," Cathara explained, securing the drill with reinforced brackets she had fabricated. "And when corporations destroy your world, you learn that you cannot trust other people's equipment. You must make everything better yourself." As they worked, the ground beneath them began to shake. Riley grabbed onto the nearest support beam, her heart racing. "Earthquake!" she shouted, but Cathara just continued working, barely pausing as the ground trembled beneath her feet. "Not earthquake," she said calmly. "Thermal expansion. The planet's core is very active. This happens every few hours." "And that doesn't worry you?" Riley asked, still holding on to the support beam. "Only if we build poorly," Cathara replied. "But we will not build poorly." True to her word, when the shaking stopped, all of Cathara's modifications remained solid and secure. The equipment that the previous teams had used would have been shaken apart, but Cathara's reinforced setup didn't even vibrate. On their second day, they began actual mining operations. Riley operated the controls while Cathara handled the physical work of positioning equipment and clearing debris. The rare crystals they were after grew deep in the planet's crust, in areas where the pressure and heat would crush most mining equipment. But Cathara had anticipated this. She had modified their drill bits to handle the extreme conditions, and she had redesigned their extraction system to work under tremendous pressure. "The crystals are beautiful," Cathara said, holding up a chunk of glowing blue mineral they had just extracted. "On my home world, we had legends about stones that captured starlight. These look just like them." Riley took the crystal and marveled at its beauty. Each one was worth more than most people made in a year, and their modified equipment was pulling them out of the ground faster than anyone had thought possible. "At this rate, we'll finish the job in half the time the contract specified," Riley said. "Good," Cathara replied. "Then we can extract twice as much and make twice the profit." Riley laughed. "I like the way you think, but their success wasn't just about the mining." As they worked together, Riley realized that Cathara brought something else to the operation, a completely different way of approaching problems. When their primary drill overheated, most species would have stopped work and waited for it to cool down. But Cathara simply lifted the entire drill assembly and moved it to a shaded area, then rigged a cooling system using spare parts and the planet's natural air currents. When toxic gas started seeping from one of their mining shafts, threatening to contaminate their work area, Cathara didn't panic. She quickly constructed a ventilation system that redirected the gas safely away from their operation. Every problem that arose, Cathara solved with a combination of engineering knowledge, physical strength, and creative thinking that Riley had never seen before. "You know what's funny?" Riley said on their fourth day as they loaded another container full of valuable crystals. "Everyone back at Nexus Station calculated how much you would cost to employ, but nobody calculated how much value you would create." Cathara paused in her work. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we've already extracted more crystals than the last 3 teams combined. We've done it faster, safer, and with better equipment than anyone thought possible. The modifications I made to hire you didn't cost money. They made money." Riley gestured to their successful operation. "Any other species would have needed a team of 20 workers, specialized equipment worth millions, and months of preparation to do what we've done in 4 days. You did it with some spare parts and engineering knowledge." Cathara looked around at their mining setup with pride. "My people always said that good work speaks for itself." "Your people were right," Riley said, "and I think it's about time the galaxy heard what your work has to say." That evening, as they prepared their daily progress report to send back to Nexus Station, Riley made sure to include detailed information about Cathara's contributions. She documented the innovative solutions, the improved equipment designs, and the exceptional results they were achieving. "Why are you writing so much?" "About me?" Cathara asked, reading over Riley's shoulder. "Because I want everyone to know what I learned," Riley replied. "I want them to understand that hiring you wasn't charity or kindness, it was good business." She looked at her partner, because that's what Cathara had become, a true partner in their success. I want other humans to see what happens when we look past immediate costs and focus on long-term value. And I want other Titan High to know that someone out here recognizes what they're worth." Cathara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Captain Riley, I have worked with many species over the years, but humans are different. You see possibilities where others see problems. You build partnerships where others see transactions." Riley smiled. "That's what we do best. We see the potential in people and situations, and we're willing to invest in making that potential real." As they settled down for the night, their mining equipment humming quietly in the background, Riley felt a deep satisfaction. They were succeeding beyond everyone's expectations, proving that sometimes the best investments are the ones that others are afraid to make. Tomorrow, they would continue their work, extracting more crystals and building an even stronger case for why the galaxy needed to reconsider how it valued the Titan High people. But tonight, Riley was content to know that she had made a decision that changed 2 lives for the better, hers and Cathara's. And maybe, just maybe, they were about to change a whole lot more. The docking bay at Nexus Station fell completely silent when Riley and Cathara walked off their ship. Word had already spread about their impossible success on Kepler 442b, but seeing them return with cargo holds full of rare crystals made it real. Riley watched the faces of the other traders as they stared at Cathara. The same aliens who had dismissed her just 2 weeks ago were now looking at her with very different eyes. She could practically see them recalculating everything they thought they knew about the Titan High. Vex, the Zephyrian station manager, was the first to approach them. His usual grumpy expression had been replaced by something that looked almost like respect. "Captain Riley," he said, his feathers slightly ruffled with excitement, "the reports we received, are they accurate? You truly extracted 3 times. The expected amount?" "Actually, it was closer to 4 times," Riley replied casually, enjoying the shocked look on Vex's face. "Cathara's modifications to our equipment worked better than we hoped." All eyes turned to Cathara, who stood quietly beside Riley. The giant alien seemed uncomfortable with the sudden attention, but she held her head high. "How did you do it?" asked a Veltari trader, who had completely ignored Cathara during her weeks at the labor exchange. "Our best teams couldn't even survive 3 days on that planet." "We did not try to fight the planet," Cathara said simply. "We worked with its conditions instead of against them. But the gravity, the toxic atmosphere, the unstable ground," the Veltari pressed. "How did you overcome those challenges?" Cathara glanced at Riley, who nodded encouragingly. "Those were not challenges for me," Cathara explained. "My people evolved on a similar world. What you see as obstacles, I see as familiar conditions." Within hours, news of their success had spread throughout the station. Traders who had never given Cathara a second look were suddenly very interested in hiring Titan High workers. But Riley quickly noticed something that bothered her. "I need a Titan High for heavy lifting on Gamma Station," one trader announced. "I can pay standard rates." "I have mining work on Kepler 229, said another. "Perfect, for big, strong workers." Riley watched these conversations with growing frustration. They were still missing the point completely. "Excuse me?" she interrupted one particularly loud discussion. "But you're all thinking about this wrong." The group of traders turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" asked a Corvin merchant. "You're still treating the Titan High like expensive equipment," Riley explained. "You want to hire them for basic heavy lifting and dangerous work because they're big and strong. But that's not why Cathara and I succeeded." She gestured to her partner, who was listening intently. "We succeeded because Cathara is an engineer, not just muscle. She solved problems that stopped 3 other teams. She redesigned equipment that everyone said was impossible to improve. Her size was just one small part of what made her valuable." The traders looked confused. "But surely their strength is their main advantage," the Corvin merchant asked. Their strength is useful, Riley agreed. But their knowledge, their experience, their different way of thinking, that's what made the difference. Any species can provide muscle if you bring enough workers. But how many species can completely rethink an impossible problem and find a solution no one else saw? Later that evening, Riley sat in her ship's common area with Cathara, reviewing job offers that had started pouring in. Most of them were exactly what Riley had expected. Requests for basic labor that happened to pay well because of the dangerous working conditions. They still do not understand, Cathara said sadly, reading through the offers. They see our success, but they think it was just about being strong enough to work where others cannot. Some of them, yes, Riley agreed, but not all of them. She pulled up a message on her communication pad. Look at this one. It's from a human colony on the edge of Federation space. They're building a new city on a high-gravity world, and they need engineers who understand how to construct buildings that can withstand extreme conditions. Cathara's eyes lit up as she read the message. They are asking for engineers first, laborers second. Exactly. This human colony administrator looked at our report and understood what really happened. She realized that your engineering knowledge was the key to our success, not just your physical abilities. Over the next few days, more messages arrived from human colonies and human-run companies. Each one was different from the alien job offers. Instead of asking for strong workers for dangerous jobs, the humans were asking for experienced engineers, familiar with extreme environment construction, and technical specialists with expertise in heavy gravity operations. The humans see it, Cathara observed. They understand what we accomplished and why. We think differently about partnerships, Riley explained. Most alien species calculate the cost of hiring someone and compare it to the immediate benefits. Humans tend to think about what someone might accomplish if given the right opportunity. The difference became even more obvious when other Titan High started arriving at the station. Word had spread through their scattered communities that someone had finally succeeded in finding good work. Within a week, 5 more Titan High had made their way to Nexus Station, hoping to find similar opportunities. Riley watched as the same pattern repeated itself. Alien traders approached the new arrivals, asked about their strength and endurance, calculated food and housing costs, and then offered jobs that were essentially well-paid manual labor. But the humans who arrived at the station took a completely different approach. Captain Torres, who ran supply routes for human colonies, spent 3 hours talking with a Titan High engineer named Brixon about structural design principles. She wasn't calculating how much it would cost to hire him. She was trying to understand what unique knowledge and skills he could bring to her construction projects. Commander Chen, representing a human mining consortium, interviewed another Titan High named Veloth, not about her lifting capacity, but about her experience with geological surveys and her understanding of how different planetary conditions affected mining operations. It is remarkable, Cathara said, watching these interviews. The humans ask about our education, our experience, our ideas. The other species ask about our strength and our stomach capacity. Different priorities, Riley agreed. Aliens tend to see workers as resources to be utilized efficiently. Humans tend to see workers as partners with untapped potential. The contrast became even more striking when a group of Veltari traders made an offer to hire all the newly arrived Titan High as a group. We will provide housing, food, and standard wages, their spokesperson announced. In exchange, you will provide labor for our deep space mining operations. It is a fair exchange. We meet your needs, you meet ours. Riley could see the Titan High considering the offer. It was steady work with guaranteed pay, which was more than most of them had seen in months. But then Captain Torres made her counteroffer. I'm not offering to hire all of you, she said honestly. I'm offering to partner with each of you individually on projects that match your specific skills and interests. The pay will vary depending on the work, but you'll have input into every project. You work on You'll be part of the planning process, not just the execution. The difference was subtle, but important. The Veltari were offering employment, work in exchange for payment. The human was offering partnership, collaboration towards shared goals. Why? Do humans think this way? Brixton asked Riley later. Why do you see us as partners instead of just workers? Riley thought about it carefully. I think it's because humans have always had to work together to survive. We're not the strongest or fastest or smartest species in the galaxy, but we're really good at combining different people's strengths to accomplish things none of us could do alone. She looked around at the Titan High who had gathered to hear her explanation. When I hired Cathara, I wasn't buying her strength. I was investing in what we could accomplish together. That's a very human way of thinking about relationships. Cathara nodded thoughtfully. And that is why you see opportunity where others see expense. Right, Riley agreed. We don't just calculate what something costs today. We imagine what it might be worth tomorrow if we invest in it properly. As the week continued, Riley watched with satisfaction as each of the newly arrived Titan High found work with human employers. Not all of them would succeed immediately. Partnerships required effort from both sides. But for the first time in their lives, they were being valued for their minds as much as their bodies. The change was already visible in how they carried themselves. The defeated, rejected aliens who had arrived at the station were transforming into confident professionals who knew their worth. Captain Riley, Cathara said on their last night at the station, I want to thank you for something I did not expect. What's that? You did not just give me a job, you gave my people hope. For the first time since our world was destroyed, we are not just surviving. We are building something new. Riley smiled. That's what humans do best, Cathara. We help people build new possibilities from the pieces of what came before. As they prepared to leave the station for their next job, another impossible mining operation that other species had given up on, Riley felt proud of what they had started. Riley was halfway through her morning coffee when the emergency alarm started blaring throughout Nexus Station. The lights in her ship's common area shifted to red, and the station's automated voice filled the air with urgent announcements. All residents, please remain in your current locations. Station structural integrity compromised. Evacuation protocols may be necessary. This is not a drill. Cathara looked up from the engineering reports she had been reviewing. That does not sound good, she said with typical understatement. Riley was already moving toward the communication console. Station control, this is Captain Riley aboard the Determination. What's the situation? The response came immediately, and Riley could hear the panic in the controller's voice. Captain Riley, we have multiple structural failures in the primary support ring. The station is coming apart and our repair teams can't handle the scale of the damage. We're looking at complete structural collapse within hours. Through the viewports, Riley could see other ships beginning to undock from the station. Smart captains were getting their vessels to a safe distance before Nexus Station tore itself apart. How many people are still on the station? Riley asked. Over 40,000, came the grim reply. We're trying to evacuate, but the structural damage is blocking most of the main corridors. People are trapped in different sections. Riley looked at Cathara, who was already standing and moving toward the equipment lockers. Captain, her partner said quietly, I think I know what caused this. What do you mean? Cathara pulled up a structural diagram of the station on their main display. Remember when we modified your ship to accommodate me? The station manager complained about the cost and said it made no economic sense. Riley nodded, not sure where this was going. Well, Nexus Station was built the same way most alien structures are built, with minimum materials and maximum efficiency. It works fine under normal conditions, but... Cathara pointed to several areas on the diagram. These support structures were never designed to handle unexpected stress. If something goes wrong, the whole system fails. as if to prove her point. Another alarm sounded, and the station shuddered visibly through their viewport. "The repair teams," Cathara continued, "they are probably small maintenance crews with lightweight equipment. They cannot work in the dangerous areas where the real damage is happening." Riley understood immediately. "But you could." "We could," Cathara corrected. "This is not a job for one person, even a Titan High. But the other Titan High who found work with human captains, they are still here. Their ships have not left yet." Riley was already reaching for the communication controls. "All human vessels, this is Captain Riley. I need to speak with any Titan High crew members immediately." Within minutes, she had Brixen, Veloth, and 3 other Titan High engineers on a group call. When she explained the situation, their response was immediate and unanimous. "We will help," Brixen said simply. "This station gave us hope when we had none. We will not let it fall." "But the danger," Riley warned. "The structural damage means the repair areas could collapse at any moment. Even with your strength, this could be deadly." "Captain Riley," Cathara said, her voice filled with quiet determination, "my people have a saying. A structure built with honor never truly falls. We built cities that lasted for thousands of years. We will not let this station fail while we have the strength to save it." The next few hours were unlike anything Riley had ever experienced. While other ships fled to safety, 6 human vessels moved closer to the station. Each one carried Titan High engineers who understood exactly what needed to be done. Riley watched through her ship's cameras as Cathara and her people worked in conditions that would have killed any other species. The damaged sections of the station were filled with toxic gas leaks, unstable debris, and gravity fluctuations that made normal movement impossible. But the Titan High moved through it all like they were built for exactly this kind of work, which Riley realized they were. Cathara directed the operation like a master conductor leading an orchestra. She had Brixen and Veloth reinforcing the main support beams, while the others worked on rerouting power and life support around the damaged areas. "The primary structural failure is here," Cathara reported over the communication link, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "The original builders used lightweight materials that cracked under stress. We are replacing them with reinforced supports." "Where are you getting reinforced supports?" Riley asked. "We are making them," Cathara replied. "The station's manufacturing bay has the materials we need. We are simply building what should have been built in the first place." Hour after hour, the Titan High worked. Riley could see them, through the station's external cameras, moving massive pieces of equipment that would have required teams of smaller workers and specialized machinery. But more importantly, she could see them thinking, planning, and solving problems on the spot. When a critical support beam cracked completely, threatening to bring down an entire section of the station, Veloth designed a temporary support system using spare parts from nearby shops. When toxic gas started flooding one of the work areas, Brixen built an improvised ventilation system that cleared the air in minutes. "Captain Riley," came a transmission from station control. "Whatever your people are doing, it's working. The structural integrity readings are actually improving," Riley smiled. "They're not just fixing the damage, they're making the whole station stronger." "How is that possible?" "Because they're not just repair workers," Riley explained. "They're engineers. They're building it right instead of just building it cheap." As the crisis continued, something remarkable happened. Other ships that had fled to safety began returning. Not to help with the repairs. They couldn't work in the dangerous conditions, but to watch. The entire galaxy seemed to be holding its breath as 6 Titan High worked too, save 40,000 lives. "This is unprecedented," came a transmission from a Veltari news ship. "We are witnessing structural engineering performed under conditions that should be impossible to survive." "Look at the precision," added a commentator from a Zephyrian broadcast. "Vessel. They are not just preventing collapse. They are actively improving the station's design in real time." Finally, after 8 hours of continuous work, Cathara's voice came over the communication system one last time. "Station Control, this is Cathara. Primary repairs are complete. Secondary reinforcements are in place. Nexus Station is now structurally sound and rated for twice its previous maximum capacity." The cheer that went up throughout the station could be heard even through the vacuum of space. 40,000 lives had been saved by 6 beings that most of the galaxy had considered too expensive to employ. As the Titan High finally returned to their ships, exhausted but victorious, Riley realized that everything had changed. The galaxy had just witnessed something that would be talked about for generations. The beings that no one wanted to hire had just saved one of the most important trading stations in known space. Over the following days, job offers poured in from across the galaxy. But these weren't the same kinds of offers the Titan High had received before. These were requests for engineering consultants, structural design experts, and emergency response specialists. The galaxy had finally seen what Riley had recognized from the beginning. The Titan High weren't just big and strong. They were master builders whose knowledge and skills were invaluable. "Captain Riley," Cathara said as they prepared to leave Nexus Station, "I have been thinking about what you said when you first hired me. You said everyone else saw problems, but you saw solutions." "I remember. I think I understand now why humans are different. You do not just see what things are. You see what they could become." Riley nodded. "And more importantly, we're willing to invest in making that potential real." 6 months later, Riley and Cathara sat in the office of their new business, a consulting firm that specialized in matching difficult-to-employ species with opportunities that utilized their unique strengths. On the wall behind them hung a picture of Nexus Station, now reinforced with Titan High engineering and stronger than ever. Below it was a simple plaque that read, "True worth is not measured by what something costs, but by what it can accomplish." "Our next client is interesting," Cathara said, reviewing their appointment schedule. "A species called the Ethereal Ones. Apparently, they exist partially outside normal space-time, which makes them impossible to manage using standard employment practices." Riley grinned. "Sounds like our kind of challenge." "Indeed," Cathara agreed. "I suspect there is a human out there who will see opportunity where everyone else sees impossibility." As they prepared for their next case, Riley reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy was slowly learning what humans had always known, that diversity of capabilities strengthened communities, and that the most valuable partnerships were often the ones that seemed impossible at first. But most importantly, beings across the galaxy were beginning to discover their own true worth, one partnership at a time. And that, Riley thought with satisfaction, was exactly how the universe was supposed to work.